Okay. How you doing?
I'm good.
Hi.
It's been a whirlwind of a couple of, 2 weeks.
Yes.
School vacation, couple of events, going down to Florida for the Do More Deal Summit, and then the big EXP Top Producers event down in Dallas.
Yeah, you've been busy.
Yeah, I feel like I've been drinking from a fire hose.
How's it going?
Today's great. I was telling somebody that it's nice to be able to get back and sort of get everything out of my head and start to check things off versus adding things to my list.
Yes.
You know, it can be overwhelming to just continue to add ideas and add tasks to the list. But yeah, now it's time to put your head down and work.
Do you have anything else on the horizon, or are you about to buckle down?
Well, there's a lot of new stuff that's going to be added in. I mean, this spring's going to look a lot different than it normally has. You know, we're going to be partnering with a lot of agents here at the office to handle some of the volume.
Yep.
So that I can continue down the path of, helping other agents. And, it's not that I'm out of production, but it'll be a little bit different this year than it has been in the past.
Yeah, it'll be exciting. So you just went to the summit down in Florida. That was a huge deal. Your family went with you, the team, and this wasn't kind of just like a you go off and kind of fill up your cup kind of thing and get inspired. It was, you had a lot of people kind of looking to you as well. And then you also spoke on a panel.
Yes.
How did all that feel?
Wildly uncomfortable. Well, I think the panel felt uncomfortable. Bringing the team down and bringing some agents from the downline and exposing
and your family.
them and the family. Colleen has come to some of the events in the past, but this is the first one that the kids were able to attend, which was really cool. That was a wonderful experience to be able to have them there, because I think they're starting to realize, that dad selling real estate is not all that I do. And I think it was really cool for them to be able to see sort of a little bit of the transition. And, we talked to them about experiences and being uncomfortable and not letting sort of discomfort or fear control your actions. And sometimes it's hard for them to see us as parents be vulnerable and be uncomfortable and push into something. So from that perspective, it was, if that was the only thing, that was worthwhile for me.
That was great.
Yeah.
And it's funny you say wildly uncomfortable, because that's exactly what you said on the panel.
Yeah.
So you were sitting up there waiting your turn to speak, which I thought was interesting. An interesting approach to a panel, to go one by one instead of it kind of be like this open discussion. Aaron went down the line. So you knew it was kind of like that scene in the classroom where the teacher's calling on students every number of paragraphs. So you count down and you know which paragraph is yours. And then you just wait. So you were sitting there and waiting. You knew your turn was getting closer and closer and closer. And then you'd hear other people speak and think, what do I think about that? I wonder if I have anything to add on, or that was what I was going to say. Walk me through just waiting.
Well, so the first thing is that we didn't understand the format. I didn't know what he was going to ask. I didn't know. And that was intentional on Aaron's part. And it was sort of intentional on my part not to ask what questions were coming, because historically I would over prepare. And it's not that we didn't run through a lot of questions and answers and sort of develop the thought process.
Yes.
But it wasn't a sort of scripted, hey, I'm going to ask you these 3 things, have answers prepared for them. I didn't really know what he was going to ask. I was prepared as far as what I believed would be of value, but it's kind of funny that you say, you're listening to other people and what they were at. I have no idea what other people said.
Oh my gosh.
I had zero idea.
What were you thinking? You're in a room full of hundreds of people up on stage and being recorded.
I think I was sort of nervously thinking about what my response could be, what value I could add, kind of trying to run through the answer to what I believe the question was going to be, run through that a couple of times to be able to articulate the value. But most of it was fear and anxiety. And I have a stress response where when I am stressed, I get twitchy, muscly, I get almost like if you're too cold, the shakes you get when you're too cold, or when you're in fight, flight, freeze.
On
Like
a
you
roller
start to
coaster?
like, you
Yeah.
start to get anxiety and sort of shakiness. Your heart rate goes up, all of that kind of stuff. Like I got
You were feeling that on stage.
the entire time.
Really?
Yeah. To the point where I thought my back was going to spasm because I was I had run through my mind, like what would, if my back spasms, I obviously would need to stand up and stretch it out. Like I was like, all right, where would I go? Like, how would I get off the stage with minimal interruption in the entire thing? And
you were sweating? Or just, it was your body?
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, Aaron keeps those rooms pretty darn cold.
Okay.
Yeah, I was
still,
sweating.
You have a cold sweat.
It was fear.
Of what?
I don't know that I think it comes from just doing something new where I rely heavily on facts and experiences to give me comfort. And when things like that happen, I have this subconscious, I think, fear that I'm not going to be able to articulate or give a good response, or I won't be able to think. I don't think in a fear-based or stressful situation. I historically don't believe that I've been able to properly articulate my thoughts. Like when I get into arguments with Colleen.
Okay.
As rare as they are, she can very clearly work through. She can dominate you when quickly. It's an emotional response. When I have an emotional response, it's like, yeah, but I don't care, and I get like frazzled.
You lock up.
I lock up, and so like we have an understanding now that when we have an emotional conversation, if I am unable to,
I love that. By the way, you say thoughts, emotional conversation instead of a fight.
Yeah, well,
smart.
What's interesting is that, but I don't believe, like, we don't get into fights because I think there's just a really there's a very good amount of mutual respect that we have for one another, and I think we understand what one another will bring to the conversation, but. There's an understanding that if I get to a certain point, like the conversation needs to stop and I need to walk away.
Yes.
If you give me 15, 20 minutes, the emotion and the anxiety reduces to the point where I can put thoughts together.
Yes.
So that is...
I know that feeling.
That's primarily... That's why I try to be as scripted as I can. But the realization that I had after that event was that when I speak from my heart or my gut, I can very, very clearly articulate my beliefs. But when I try to run my beliefs from my heart and my gut through my head to articulate them properly, that's where it gets all messed up. Because what happens is I consciously think about the idea that if I don't relay this, then I've either made a mistake or I've done something properly. And then that means that I have control about how it's perceived. And then if I have control over how it's perceived, it can go good or bad because of me. Mm-hmm. And then I have fear about failing and doing things improperly and not having the message relayed across. But when I just speak from my heart and my gut, it doesn't matter because that's just what it is. And I'm sort of detached from it. So,
but that is not what you're most naturally comfortable with. It's the best thing you can do is to just shoot from the hip, speak from your heart. But it is so like you've almost trained yourself to not do that because
training myself.
But you've trained in the past yourself to speak from your head, to have it all like put together and scripted. Mm-hmm. And that's where you've kind of become more comfortable with. And then But
yeah, I don't know that
it's not the best outcome.
Decision.
Okay.
That was just what I did.
To survive.
Yeah. Hey guys, just going to take a minute here. If you're enjoying the conversation that we're having, part of the way that we can have a bigger impact on people is by sort of expanding our audience. So if you have a minute, whatever platform that you guys are on, whether it's YouTube or Spotify, Instagram, just hit the like and subscribe button, follow along to what we're doing. That simple act will help support what we're doing and allow us to, produce more of this content and have a bigger impact on other people. So if you're enjoying what we're doing, we would appreciate if you like and subscribe to our channels, and I hope you guys are having a great day.
You're up there. You're uncomfortable. You know that when you're uncomfortable and you want to do well, your first response is to be like, okay, this is what I'm going to say and this is how it's going to go. And like kind of like have a plan.
Yep.
But you know what would be more impactful would be to just go unscripted and to just like kind of go with whatever comes out. And to know that that's what you should do was making you like, you were like, which one do I do? Which one do I do?
So I don't know that in that moment I didn't have that conscious decision pattern. I think I was trying to articulate through my brain my beliefs and my thoughts on the question that was being answered.
Yeah.
In hindsight and reflection, I have that realization, but in the moment I don't.
What I love that you did, though, is you started it off with true honesty. And you said, I am so uncomfortable. Like you just admitted it.
Yeah.
And you didn't try and pretend that you weren't.
I had no plan to do that, by the way. I had planned on answering the question. And in the exact moment my mouth opened, that's what came out.
Really?
Yeah.
That's amazing. Because that was real.
Sure.
No, it was. It was real. And I'm sure it had everyone else take a breath. And that's what I kind of want to talk about is you were so honest up there that this is, I am like dying up here. And everybody, it made everybody relax. And
since then, I've thought a lot about that experience. And I do believe that is... So I've been reading the book Amplify Your Influence with Rene Rodriguez, who's just an incredible person. And I've been to a couple of his keynote speeches and a couple of smaller events that he's put on. And what I'm realizing is that we all have these core values that we have. And a lot of our core values were determined between the ages of 9 and 13. And when I went through the exercise of understanding why I am the way that I am and how I developed my beliefs and my values is probably a better word than beliefs. But when I determine my values, one of the things that I think I don't give myself credit for is my ability to inject humor into situations to ease comfort for everybody. But I think that through a number of different experiences when I was a kid, I developed an ability to lighten the mood because when I'm in an environment where there's high stress and tension, that is probably the most uncomfortable I can get. That's why I don't deal well with drama. I married a woman that's not dramatic. High emotion and chaos to me it puts me in a state where I can't think or articulate or do very much of anything.
So what's interesting about your way that you insert humor, though, is that you do it about yourself. Like you don't kind of like point someone else out or talk about the situation. You just talk about how you're feeling.
Yeah. Generally, I have a dry sense of humor, sarcastic, and it's generally self-deprecating.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. The beauty of that is that typically that is the most honest form of humor. And when people can laugh at themselves and just allow yourself to be made fun of, I think it shows the most actually confidence in a way. And people find it very refreshing. Yeah. Like, okay, me too. I feel that way too. And they're admitting it.
Yeah.
And it's this way of like packaging honesty. And people find it so refreshing. And I think the reason we find it so refreshing and that we're drawn to it is because we're constantly being given the opposite. Like everything's at an angle. Everything is an advertisement. Like you think you're getting something honest from someone and you realize, it's a paid partnership. Like, constantly.
Yeah. And I think that comes down to authenticity. And I don't know that I don't believe that most people intend to be that way. I think that it is a defense mechanism for most folks to deal with discomfort and anxiety is they create an avatar of who they believe people want
I'm guilty
them
of
to
it.
be.
I'm guilty. I create an avatar of who I want to be. So like speaky whatnot. Like I almost like make it into reality. Mm-hmm. So I'm not good at like showing honesty. I don't know that women in general are, because we have this like front that we need to put out. But
well, so I think it can be conscious or unconscious, and there's probably a combination of both for most folks, right? What they aspire to be versus what they're picking up from external influences.
To be told what to be. Or what they think they should be.
Correct. And I don't know that it's told to be specifically, but I think all of us subconsciously look at and evaluate everyone else's external sort of being, right? So that goes for Instagram, that goes for people up on stages, that goes for people that we admire, right? A lot of us, a lot of men and women for that matter, grow up and we idolize sports figures and movie stars.
Yes.
And, all of these. Success, right? And we try to emulate that because from the outside, the external appearance of these folks look like what we imagine that we would want. So subconsciously or consciously, we say, well, they're beautiful, they're successful, they're rich, they've got nice cars, they've got beautiful spouses,
they're happy,
right? But you're comparing your insides to somebody else's outsides. And what I think that I've realized upon a lot of reflection too is that when I was sort of growing up, I looked to everybody else because I wasn't very introspective. Like I didn't look inside and internally into what I really wanted, what would make me happy. I very much looked at everyone else and determined sort of what appeared to be happiness or success or beauty or whatever. And then I go, oh, well, I want that. And that person's doing all of these things. So if I do all of these things, I'll have what they have and then I'll be that person.
Yes.
The problem with that I've realized is that, number one, the person that I see is likely not the same person they are.
We're realizing that more. We're like, as we've been experiencing social media for how long? 10 years?
Yeah.
So we're still new, but we're getting better at it. And we're starting to realize what you see online, what you said, that's not who they are. And we've made up the story and we're believing the story that they're making up.
But I think the big distinction is that, everything in life has a push and pull with it, right? Everything has pros and cons, success and fame. Think about fame. So, you look at somebody who has an immense amount of fame externally, it seems amazing, but that person can't walk down the street without being noticed. They're in a prison of their own fame, right? Highly successful people that work a lot, right?
Yeah.
Amazing. They have a yacht. They have this big, beautiful house. They have all the cars. They have all the money that they could ever freaking spend, but they're in a prison of the job that requires them or that allows them to make the money that puts them in this prison. So I think what I've realized again upon reflection is that, I was taking all of these external stimuli or dreams or goals or people, and I was sort of collecting the best of everything and then imagining that if I obtained all of those very difficult to obtain sort of characteristics or outcomes, that I would then be happy and feel satisfied. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't take into account the sacrifice and the other side of the coin of what it took to get there or do that. Mm-hmm. So like, even if you look at, fitness, yes. Do I want to, look like this individual, right? Muscular, not lean, but, a good tan and, like the appropriate amount of bigness, but not that. And you say, okay, that's the goal. That goal to be that person takes 2 to 3 hours a day, mm-hmm. 6 to 7 days a week, eating exceptionally well and a tremendous amount of focus to do that specific thing. Well, I want that, but I also want success. I also want, lots of money. And so in order to obtain lots of money, I need to do all of these things that require an intense amount of sacrifice and an intense amount of time. And so you start to pick all these things apart and you start to realize, I think subconsciously or consciously, that it's almost unattainable to look at all of those things. And regardless of whether you want to, like you said at the beginning, hold that as a pinnacle to try to strive for, I think what we fail to do, or at least I failed to do at that point in my life, was to realize whether or not that other person's external goal or what they were as a person, whether that's actually something that aligns with what I actually want or not. And so then you get into a situation where you're striving for unrealistic goals and expectations for things that you don't actually want. And then you beat yourself up when you aren't able to do the actions and have the consistency and the determination to obtain those things. And then you go, well, I must not be good enough. And I think that and then you just do that sort of over time. And I think that people start to become so discouraged that they don't allow themselves to dream or work towards a goal anymore, because they've, again, consciously or subconsciously, like, conditioned themselves to not think that that's possible. They
set themselves up for constantly falling short and like this mirage. So you were doing that, and you're very honest about that, which is now your whole new approach. And what happened? Like, what do you feel like, say for instance, social media or being on the panel, and you are trying to be more honest and speak from your heart and not filter anything and not calculate, which does land better. But how are you able to do that? What changed?
A lot of things have changed. I think the guiding principle behind it, or sort of thought that keeps coming to my head, is that discomfort of staying the same was greater than the discomfort of like change. So for me, I worked a lot, because if you look at it, I had to make a really big connection between like discomfort and suffering and the outcome, and be very, very clear on what I wanted out of life and what was important to me. And that took a long time. And it's not that I wasn't moving in that direction, but it's really, it's almost like you're pulling so hard when you're not really, really clear on what you want out of life and the person that you want to become and the impact that you want to have. And as soon as that vision has gotten stronger, the difficulties that I experience, they don't go away, but I feel a stronger passion to do them and not question it than I did before.
And we've talked before, and that's because you don't question what people think anymore online or in the room, because you know your truth and you're figuring it out. And that's not to say that you won't, have little like side steps and things like that, but you know what you're working towards now, and you know that you are on a path to figuring it out. So whether someone perceives it a certain way or accepts it or not is inconsequential to you. And you are moving, and you are going to say things that are true about you right now. And it may not be true 2 years ago, and it may not be true in the future, but right now you're on this journey and this path, and what everyone else thinks about it and how they kind of perceive it is their own choice.
There's a lot of things that have helped me get to that point, and it has not been easy, but I think I go back to, and I forget who said this originally to me, but the whole idea that if you do what's easy, your life will be hard. And if you do what's hard, your life will be easy. And that goes for almost anything in life. Think about it. I mean, if you in the moment want to eat like crap and not work out, that's easier, but the result of that will be harder, right? You won't feel as good. You'll gain weight. You'll die sooner. But if you do what's hard, which is to exercise and to eat right, then your life will be easier in the long run. That's the same thing with business too. If you do what's hard, like business will eventually be easy, right? If you do what's easy, you won't make money and your life will be hard.
Would you say that's the same for social media and like a digital world? That being authentic is actually the harder thing, and being honest online and being honest up on a panel, being honest in front of an audience is actually the harder thing. But in the end, it takes the pressure off, where if you choose
So I understand where you're going, but here, I think that suffering and discomfort have a bad rap. I think people, when they hear suffering, they're like, oh, I want to stay away from suffering at all costs. I don't want to be uncomfortable at all costs.
Uncomfortable.
Right. Uncomfortable, suffering. The suffering actually, if you look at the root word of suffering, it actually comes from the word passion. I think people have this idea that they want to be happy all of the time.
And comfortable
all of the time.
Yeah.
But if you, the best example is like the folks who have been given inheritances where they don't have to do anything in life.
Mm-hmm.
The vast majority of those people are wildly unhappy.
Mm-hmm.
It's because they haven't connected anything in their life to a passion or a vision or a goal.
Mm-hmm.
So they float through life with everything being easy. Now they have all the money in the world, but they're not happy. Why is that? And so I think discomfort and suffering is actually where growth happens. I don't think you can have growth without discomfort. Think about anything that you do that you're going to grow with.
Mm-hmm.
It's always when you're uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started, again, through a lot of work, just connecting the dots between being uncomfortable and growth. And the more that I do things, the more that I push against discomfort, that I lean into it, the more growth I have and the less power that specific activity has to make me uncomfortable. You know, being on a podcast originally was wildly uncomfortable. I think I tell the story a couple of times where, you know, Aaron invited me on the podcast right after I started working with him a few years ago. And I was so concerned. I asked him what questions he was going to ask me. I prepared with Colleen for weeks on what I was going to say. Like, I was so concerned about what the outfit I was going to wear. And like, I got done with the podcast, and I still, to this day, I keep saying that I need to go back and actually watch the podcast to see what it was like. But I couldn't even watch it afterwards. That's how uncomfortable it was. And that was like 2-3 years ago. And the same thing, it used to take me 30 minutes to shoot a reel for Instagram.
Yes.
And now it doesn't, like, you come into my office, you tell me what we're going to do, and then I shoot it.
Yes.
Or I just pick up the camera and shoot it. And I'm not looking again at what I look like or how certainly for production value, we want it to be of a certain quality, but it's more the quality of the video versus the quality of what I look like in the moment.
And then the panel was a new discomfort that you had never experienced before. Like a new situation that you were putting yourself in.
I think at that size, I mean, that's the first time that I did an event here at the office. It was very similar. But
because, the events too. I mean, gosh, the events are so, I couldn't imagine doing that every single month. Putting it out there, talking about it, setting it up. What if no one shows up? Mm-hmm. What if no one comes back? Like, there's so many what ifs, fears of failure, and it's so uncomfortable that so many people don't lean into it. But what I've seen you keep doing is you leaned into the discomfort of doing a podcast with Aaron. You leaned into the discomfort of being on social media a lot. Mm-hmm. Like, you're on there all the time.
Yep.
Not just these perfectly curated little recap reels of a trip you went on. Then you leaned into the discomfort of being on a panel and not knowing even how it was going to go and what you were going to be asked in front of hundreds of people. So do you think because you keep going back to the discomfort that it was, even though it was uncomfortable, you knew it was going to be okay, or it was worth it? When you start to keep going back to the discomfort, I think you start to see the value. Where if you never go there, you'll never know the value of being uncomfortable.
So a couple of things come up for me. So I think that you have to, I mean, the direction that any person is going in, like what you want to accomplish, or, what your values are, or, I think those things can change and shift over time. They certainly have for me. But I think when you make the connection between the activities that you're doing and the result or the outcome that it will have over time, I think that's where the magic starts to happen, when that connection takes place. What I think is hard for people is that in general, it will take drastically longer than people have the expectation. Okay. So people way overestimate what they can accomplish within a year and drastically underestimate what they can get done in 5. And one of the things that Aaron talks about too is the idea that if it's not worth doing for a decade, it's not worth doing for a day. So think about that for a second. So if it's not worth doing for a decade, it's not worth doing for a day.
The long game.
It's a long game. And if you commit to something, health, right? Like so many people have New Year's resolutions. They get out there and they expect change within a few months. And they expect their behaviors and their patterns to change within a month, a 30-day thing. And that's not the reality. People who have committed to a healthy lifestyle, that's their lifestyle. That's not I'm going to push for 90 days and then I'm going to it's a consistency. Mm-hmm. And so I know at the core of who I want to be and what I want to do in life, I want to have a massive impact on human beings and, whoever I can come in contact with. And in order to do that, I need to be able to have attention. I need to be able to be comfortable and authentic. I need to define very clearly what my beliefs are. But that also made me go back and evaluate my beliefs, because beliefs are just an opinion that you've created loyalty to over time. So again, I'm going to say that not because you didn't hear me, but because it's really important. So the beliefs are just an opinion that you've created loyalty to over time. And a lot of the times we have these beliefs that we don't ever question anymore. Well, I believe this, and I'm going to block up a wall. I'm not even going to hear you. I'm not going to talk about it because it is my belief. It is a value that I have that I'm never going to give up. You formulated that belief from an opinion you took through an experience, likely a very long time ago.
Yeah.
I love the Red Sox. Well, why do you love the Red Sox? Well, because when my dad was young, he loved the Red Sox. And this is not true for me because my dad liked the Yankees, but I love the Red Sox because my dad loved the Red Sox. And, during impressionable years, dad loves the. So you formulated that belief at that point. You've created loyalty to it. And now you cannot get you can't change your mind. Yes. Right? Yeah. But if you go back and you create it, well, okay, why do I love the Red Sox? Well, it's because my dad loved the Red Sox. Well, is that a compelling enough, sort of reason and justification and experience to continue to have this belief? And so you have to really come back to, and this is where you need to sort of understand and be introspective and to look sort of at your thoughts and your actions, because they're wildly uncomfortable to say, maybe I'm doing something wrong. And not even that I'm doing something wrong, but maybe I just don't believe this anymore.
Or maybe I just need to try a different way. And that, even just trying a different way of something, that change is so hard for people.
Do you know why?
No.
Okay. So, and again, I am much more of a student than a teacher in this. I am understanding and evaluating it.
But the reason we're having this conversation is because you're so open about what you're figuring out and so honest about it. And that's why it's so impactful.
And I appreciate that. If you had told, 37-year-old Ben that we would be having these open and honest emotional conversations, I would have told you you're crazy, like absolutely insane. I would not have allowed myself to be vulnerable because there was such a disconnect between vulnerability and authenticity. I thought I needed to be this person to continue to be this person, right? Whatever that vision, whatever avatar I created.
Okay, so why do people have such a hard time just trying a different way?
Because they don't have faith that the outcome is either going to happen, or faith that direction is what they should be doing, or that they can do it. So when we talk about faith is in the absence of evidence, right?
Right.
And if you really look at it, faith and fear require you to believe in something that you cannot see.
Oh yeah, they're the exact same exercise.
Mm-hmm.
Faith and fear.
Faith and fear.
It's just either you're thinking of the best possible outcome or the worst. That's it. Same exact mental exercise.
So you understand how difficult this whole transition starts to become when you have to be introspective, question your beliefs. You have to have faith without evidence. And then you have to have a clear vision of what you want the outcome or the person that you want to become or the, position that you want to be in life. Like it takes a lot of work. And I think
mentally.
Yeah. So how do you do that? And I think that's where, we all hear that you're the sum of the 5 people that you hang out with most.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that they say that is because proximity is power, right? When you're around people that are doing incredible things, that rubs off on you. And when you're with pessimistic and negative people, that rubs off on you.
Yes.
You have to be uncomfortable to put yourself in positions where you're going to be around really powerful people. And what it typically does is it amplifies being around other people who are doing things that you want to do, but that you have consciously or subconsciously chosen not to do. It illuminates the right word. It illuminates like either what you haven't done in life or what you're not doing in life. Mm-hmm. We go back to the conversation about alcohol, and this was the same thing. Being a person who gave up alcohol, being around people who are still struggling with alcohol illuminates the issue that they're having. They now see it right in front of them. So if you go into a room of really successful real estate agents, and you're a real estate agent and you've been in the business 5 or 10 years and you haven't done a hell of a lot, and everybody in there is disciplined and they go out and they produce outsized outcomes and they have a lot of things that you want, and you've got to go in and you've got to it like makes you realize like what you haven't done. And that's really, really uncomfortable. And so that prevents people from going into those rooms and creating proximity to those people. And so it's just a constant state of being uncomfortable and suffering, like that, like on stage, that was me suffering. But the next time that I do that, it won't be as bad. And the time after that, it won't be as bad as that time. And then eventually I'll get to the point where I am comfortable in front of 300 people. And then the first opportunity for me to speak in front of 3,000 people will come, and I will do the same thing. Now, it won't be probably quite as bad as some of these pillar experiences, but perhaps it is. Perhaps it's more uncomfortable.
And you could mess up. And be very uncomfortable that way. And the possibilities of discomfort are endless. But you seem comfortable with the discomfort. So
well, I think vulnerability will attracts people.
Oh, absolutely. But we're all starved for it.
But we as human beings, we don't want to be vulnerable, regardless of how much it pulls people. We want other people to be vulnerable. We love it when other people are vulnerable. Oh my God, you feel the same way? I feel that. I'm not the only one that feels that. But yet we don't outwardly do that to everyone else's benefit.
Why do you think that is?
It's hard. People have this belief that they want to be comfortable and they want to be happy all the time. That's not my goal anymore.
That switched for you.
Yeah.
So what if someone's like, okay, I want to lean into discomfort. I want to do what he's saying and just try the different way. Try to be introspective. Try to just sit with the discomfort of whatever it is. Maybe it's real estate related or relationship related. Who knows? What is the first step that they do? Just pick something? What was your first step?
I think it's more who, not how. The conversation, the great book, Who, Not How, it has a different meaning. But really, when you look at, I believe that it starts with proximity. I think that at least this was what was true for me. I needed to see someone else moving in that direction to give me permission to do the same. And I also had to have somebody in my life that was willing to not tell me what I wanted to hear, but tell me what I needed to hear. And that's the difference between sort of a friend and an ally. A friend will tell you what you want to hear because they want to encourage you and make you feel comfortable and make you feel happy. And an ally will tell you what you need to hear, which sometimes is very uncomfortable for you to hear and for them to deliver. So do you have people in your life that are going to challenge you? Like, how many people challenge you on a daily basis? I have a lot of people that challenge me to be a better person, to lean into discomfort, to do things that I never thought that I would do, to make me question the beliefs that I have.
Yeah.
3 years ago, I would have told you I'm not a people person. I don't really like people. How many times I said I don't really like people? But that was because I was uncomfortable. So I created a connection between what I discomfort and a justification. Rather than saying, hey, listen, I'm just really uncomfortable around big groups of people. I tend to be an introvert versus an extrovert. So when I'm around a lot of people, it sort of pulls a lot of energy out of me.
Like it.
It's not that I don't like it.
But you had told yourself that.
But I justified it. I created an excuse to justify not doing the thing that was uncomfortable. And we all do that. We all make excuses to justify inaction. And if you look, what was I wrote down earlier? So your beliefs will determine your thoughts will direct your actions, and your actions will define your destination.
So it's really beliefs.
I think it's beliefs. And I think, again, that's where if you're going at it all on your own, it's an uphill battle. I mean, some people might have it. I didn't.
It's funny you say that. I have a friend going through something really hard right now, and what she's wanting to do is just to pull in and just figure it out on her own. And all these people are saying, let me help you. Let me help you. And she's just like, it's like our first response is to be like, no, but we weren't designed to do that. Mm-hmm. We were designed, there's very few situations in life that you were designed to do on your own. Mm-hmm. We really were designed to have connections and do life alongside others.
Well, and an extreme example, I mean, I don't know if you watch that show Alone, where like they pick 10 people to go into the middle of the woods. Yeah. They give them like 10 things. They can bring like 10 things, and they have to survive as long as they can. And they always put them in like, you know, these beautiful places that all of a sudden become wildly cold and there's no animals around for them to eat or anything like that. And they're all by themselves. And the really good survivalists will do extraordinarily well, and they'll build these amazing shelters, and they'll go out and they'll hunt, and it always gets to a point where the $500,000 or $1 million that they would win through this competition, most people will stop. If they can survive longer, they'll stop because the overwhelming desire to be around people and the value that they now see in a human connection is so overwhelming that the money doesn't matter anymore. What they thought to be true is not.
Yeah.
That I will do anything for money. So Renee gives an example about, you know, belief, and he goes through this example, and it's really long, but it's something along the lines of like, you know, if I asked you honestly to like, what would you do for money? Would you pick up a piece of gum off the sidewalk and eat it for $10? And the answer is probably no. $10. But then
no, not $10.
Right,
100.
$10, but 100, right?
Yeah, sure.
Right. And so then $100, it's like, well, if I asked you to walk across the street, but there was a puddle, and you would have to get 2 inches of
sewage
water on your feet, and you'd have to go through the rest of the day, would you do that for $100 voluntarily? And the answer is probably no. Some people might jump at it. But then if you said, well, same thing for $1,000, somebody go, oh yeah, I would deal with wet feet for $1,000.
Yep.
It's like, all right, well, what if it was a pool and you had to swim across the pool and you'd have remained soaking wet for the rest of the day? Would you do it for $1,000? Maybe some people would, some people wouldn't. But you start to understand that there's a value that we set on certain things. On discomfort, right? And then it goes all the way down to, you know, would you swim across, you know, shark-infested pool with a cut on your hand for $1 million? And And you get to the point and you're like, no, I would never do that for any amount of money. I would not die. And why is that? The answer is because you would die, right? So if you jumped in, and the question is always like, well, what kind of sharks? Well, let's assume it's a shark that you would die, right? So the answer is always no. But then if I pose that question to you, you're going to be like, I would never jump in that pool for any amount of money. And this is going to be a little bit morbid, but what if your daughter fell into the pool? Would you jump in then? What's your answer?
Yes.
Immediately, right?
Yeah.
There is no amount of money that would prevent you from jumping in and trying to save your daughter from that situation. So people have beliefs and they have these created values. And when you boil it down, you can find out what your values are if you are introspective enough to ask yourself the questions that really matter. And that's what we do in life. Everything in life is sort of a trade-off. We're trading time for money. We're trading money for experiences. We're trading our health for comfort. We're trading our comfort for health. All of these things are trade-offs. Mm. And most people don't sit and determine what their values are in order to let those values guide their actions.
Guide the trades. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. So what's the next step for people? Look around the room?
Yeah, I think listen, you're going to have to be uncomfortable at some point, but the pain of doing something new that's uncomfortable has to be greater than the pain of staying in the same spot. And then all it requires is action. Most people consume a lot of information. So what people do is they tend to especially now where, you can go on social media and you can consume a lot of information. You can go on YouTube and watch a lot of people talk about stuff. Mm-hmm. They consume, and they think that they're doing something of value. They read 500 books in a year. They read 100 books in a year. But consuming information without action doesn't lead to anything. You're just consuming. And then what inherently you do is if you're consuming information at a high rate and you're never taking any action, then you're actually programming yourself to repeat that behavior. I consume and then I don't do anything. And I consume and then I don't do anything. And then what happens is you start to beat yourself up because you're not doing anything. So I'm really uncomfortable after I consume information. So I'm not going to consume information anymore. And you just stop.
Oh, wow.
Right? You have to start taking action immediately. Action is so underrated. And so you can use a lot of the things that I said, right? You can use the ideas that we talked about that, suffering has a bad rap, that, being uncomfortable in the situation that you're in is worse than the discomfort about taking that risk that you feel or putting yourself in an uncomfortable position or making a mistake or doing something perceived as wrong.
Yes.
Right? We all hold ourselves to the standard that we should be perfect. It's unattainable. And I think so through a lot of work and putting myself in these uncomfortable positions and then being introspective and looking back at the experience and evaluating why I felt I could not sleep. The night of the conference, I think I hung out with the team for a couple hours after dinner and I got back up to the room. I don't know, it was 11:30. And I don't think I fell asleep. I laid in the bed until, I don't know, it was probably 3:30 before I fell asleep. I got a couple hours. My mind processed and evaluated and felt, and it was emotional and it was spiritual and it was but without putting myself in that position to feel vulnerable, to feel uncomfortable, to say something that elicited an emotional response from 300 people watching me, relieve their tension and laugh a little bit. And then to have the feedback from folks on how much it meant to them, what I said about money and passion and purpose and my experience and the fact that I don't have it all figured out right now, but to have that experience without discomfort, I don't get that.
Yeah.
Right. And it just kind of goes back to the idea, and I'm at a real place of peace at this point right now. And that's not to say that I'm not always uncomfortable, but
or stressed.
I mean, the past couple of weeks has been wildly overwhelming, and it's not perfect. I'm in a room with, I put myself in a room Monday and Tuesday with, I was arguably the least conventionally successful person in that room. Like everybody made more money. Everybody had bigger downlines. Everybody sold more real estate further along than I was. Yeah. And I put myself in that position, and then I constantly put myself next to. So I sat next to Brent Grove, who, if people know who Brent Grove is, he has like 20,000 agents in his downline. I have 26. He has 20,000 people. And I sat next to him, and I spent the day sitting next to him and, hearing him have conversations and having conversations with him personally. And so I'm going to ask people, because naturally I don't want to walk up to somebody at a conference and have a conversation and take their time. And so I'm doing all of it, but with that action, it puts you through experiences where then if you can be introspective and you can look back and you can evaluate what happened, what went right, what went wrong, what you enjoyed, what you didn't, all of that kind of stuff. That's where growth happens. And that's where you realize what you truly believe and what is truly important to you and what you want out of your life. And so to go back to your question, because I went off on a tangent, I think again, people need to put themselves in proximity to believable people. So if you look at somebody, I promise you that if somebody has obtained a certain level of success and you believe in what they're doing and you approach them and say, I don't know what to say, I don't know what to do, but I see you doing this and I'm inspired by you and I just want to, I need help. Anybody that has obtained and gone through discomfort and gone through struggle and suffering and discomfort, anybody that sees that vulnerability and that desire in somebody else, it's like, honestly, is fuel for me to watch people do that, because I understand how hard that is. If people are that vulnerable and willing to put themselves through that, I will literally run through a brick wall for them. It doesn't matter if it aligns with me making money or I will, if that quality of person, that person that's willing to do that, I think is exceptionally rare. And most people, I would argue, feel the same way. And so you have to take a little bit of risk. You have to put yourself next to believable people. So you have to find believable people, which is easy these days, whether I inspire people to do something or whether, there's endless amounts of incredible people that are online and on social media.
And we're good as consumers of sniffing it out.
Yeah.
What's real, what's true.
And so
what's not.
If you find that person, then try to put yourself in proximity to them. There are plenty of people to do it. And then just constantly iterate, right? Make decisions, evaluate, because you're going to get proximity to people and then you're going to really discover whether or not they have impact on you or whether or not they're the person that they claim to be. Mm-hmm. But then you have to determine in the moment whether or not this aligns.
With where you're headed too, where you want to head.
Yep.
After you've done some self-evaluation.
Because as soon as you get comfortable with the thing that you were uncomfortable with at the beginning, then that's the comfort zone and you're not growing anymore. Mm-hmm. So sometimes people will do that. They'll be uncomfortable. They'll put them in situations and then they grow to the level of wherever they were. And now they become comfortable there.
And I'm just going to say, this conversation is you just saying that, you'll be uncomfortable and then all of a sudden it will get comfortable and then you got to keep going. Mm-hmm. That sounds exhausting to me. But what I've got to remember is I choose my pace. And you don't have to be on the fast track, like what you said, 10-year long game. This isn't
and there's seasons.
Yeah.
So there's seasons where you're going to be growing a lot more. And then there's seasons where you need to sort of establish that new baseline. Baseline. Yep.
Yeah. And that's comforting too.
Yeah.
To just know that it's going to look like this.
Well, again, even if you look at the reward center of our brains, right? Do you know how the reward center of our brain works with dopamine?
I know I feel a certain way after spin.
Yes, but you're actually not. Your dopamine has dropped after spin, right? You might feel accomplishment, but you're actually not getting dopamine. So dopamine is released in the anticipation of something, right?
Okay.
So think about it from a food perspective. Like,
yeah. Okay.
oh my God, I want that donut so bad.
Okay.
I get this dopamine rush and oh my God, it feels so good. I want that donut.
It's
I want that. I want it. Christmas. Oh my God, Santa's coming. I want it. And then it gets here and then there's almost like a,
okay.
Right? You eat it because dopamine over time is like raises, it goes up in anticipation. As soon as you accomplish or have it or do it, dopamine drops back down because it's not anticipating. It's not, your body is not releasing that dopamine anymore. So I want to make $1 million. I want to make $1 million. Feel so good. That's why when I did and dopamine dropped and I was used to that dopamine, then all of a sudden it was like, you look around and you're like, the fuck? And then you have to ask yourself, was the use of your time and life energy worth the outcome? Now, I don't look at the anticipation. I don't look like spikes of dopamine all the time. I look at consistency because the outcome that I'm trying to obtain is not, for me, it's not specific. Like I'm not driven to do 100 deals anymore or to have 100 agents in my downline. The outcome is to be a reliable and dependable person, to grow as an individual and inspire others to do the same, to have an impact, to work with, people that I like and enjoy. And those aren't things that sort of have an end or an outcome. Now there might be outcomes and ends that happen.
Or apexes.
Right. But that's to me, that's less important. And I think that that's probably been, there's a calmness and a peace in what I'm doing that I've never had before, because the outcome is not the desired result. It's I hate that line I don't hate the line. I just think it's overused. It's like, it's the journey, not the destination.
But what do they say? Like those sayings, there's so much truth, and that's why they're sayings.
But they're said so much that they lose the impact.
But it's so true.
It is. It is the enjoyment of the everyday and being present in the moment that you're in, and then recognizing. You hear me talk a lot about, or start a lot of, the events that we do. I ask people to stop and just recognize in the moment where we are and what we're doing. We talk about this at team meetings all the time. This is a very cool moment in all of our lives where we're all sort of, everyone is growing and pushing themselves to do amazing things for ourselves, our families, and other people. Mm-hmm. And I think we just we get on this wheel where we just go, and we never stop and actually understand the moment that we're in. And it goes so fast. I was up on stage for an hour.
The discomfort went really fast.
Really fast. But like, you're at the beach.
But the payoff was worth it.
But you're at the beach with your family and, okay, well, we got to go and get settled. And then we're settled. And then, okay, I got to build a sandcastle with the kids. And then we got to go here. And we got to get lunch in a little bit. And did we make reservations for dinner that night? And then, oh my God, I got to put sunscreen on the kids. And then we got to do this. And then we got to do this. And then the day's over. And then, well, what are we going to do tomorrow? And then we're going to, like, how often do we as human beings stop and look around and go, holy shit? Now, upon reflection, sometimes we do that. But in the moment, that's beautiful. If you can stop and realize in the moment that you're in the beauty of what you're experiencing, and not that it's always easy. Sometimes the beauty is the difficulty, because in no uncertain terms, if people do amazing things in life, regardless of how difficult it is, and in fact, if it's difficult and if it's uncomfortable, they'll look back at it as some of the best moments in their life.
Oh, you remember it more.
It's more impactful.
You remember your first kiss because of the anxiety related to it.
Think about professional athletes, collegiate athletes. They push for their entire lives to get to that point. And what happens to a lot of professional athletes after they leave the game? Like, a lot of them, if they don't have a purpose, they get depressed, they get fat, they get unhappy, they get divorced. And it's because all of a sudden everything that they've defined themselves as is gone. But they always look back on that as the best times in their life. when they're in the moment, they're like, oh my God, I have to train again. And it's so hard and I have to sacrifice so much. But in reflection, they look back on it. And how can we have
Same
so
with
much?
Babies.
Right. How can we
keep having babies?
How can we look at prior experiences with so much joy and happiness, and upon reflection look at it as just such an amazing experience, but in the moment never think like that?
I know, it's hard.
And so it's just about making a connection and having people that will point that out to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you go back to it, it's just find somebody that you put yourself in proximity with believable people, consume information, but then take action, right? Those are two of the big points.
Okay.
It is not easy, but it's not supposed to be. And that's not what you should be striving for. I used to strive for ease and comfort, and now I don't.
I love it. It's inspiring.
Yeah.
Thanks for being so honest. And I'm sure this will be a conversation we circle back to, because you'll find yourself in another uncomfortable situation. And I want to always just talk about those.
Yeah. And that's where I think that I'm determining what value I can provide to other people. And the prior version of yourself is probably the one that you can have the most impact on. And so I feel like I have gone through this and understood that the person that I used to be, if anybody relates to the person that I used to be, that's probably who I could have the most impact on.
Right. I love that.
Yeah. So if you're out there, certainly consume more content that we have for you. If you would like, there's links wherever you're watching this, there's some links. If you'd like to set up a 30-minute call, we can certainly set up a 30-minute call, but, I have a true passion to help other people. And if you're somebody that's in need of help, with your business or determining what you want out of life, take that first step, be brave, be uncomfortable, and reach out. That is what I'm here to do. And so, hopefully we'll have a conversation at some point, but if you've just enjoyed the conversation, then share it with other people. More people need to be honest about sort of how they feel and share things that are impactful for them. So even if you're not in that situation, this might motivate you to go out and sort of be authentic with other people and be vulnerable. And that's a great thing for this world. So thanks again.
See ya.
Peace.